So many lost, to combat, to suicide, to silence. And those who return find themselves facing a change.
I joined at 18. I created my own family, and it was good.
A new mission, life after military service.
It was way harder. It was way harder than I expected.
Many find themselves in an unknown world that doesn't understand.
At that point that the drug was using me, I couldn't stop.
And hasn't been where they have.
And so you're trained to go to war, but you're not trained to deal with what war provides to you.
But many have found a way out, a way forward.
But what I want them to know that it's that life is worth every second.
And a way to help others as they navigate this new mission.
We just want people to feel like they're not alone.
Alaska is the state with the highest number of veterans per capita, with almost 70,000 military veterans.
Verdi Bowen, Director of Veterans Affairs with the state of Alaska, estimates that a third of Alaskans are either veterans themselves or have veterans in their families, including us.
My father, Colonel James Polsha, was stationed in Alaska in the late 90s and early 2000s.
And my dad was a Master Sergeant in the Air Force stationed out at Elmendorf.
Now, one of the things that we have learned while preparing for this program is when service members leave the military, they still have a desire to serve.
You're going to meet a number of veterans in the next hour. We're going to talk about some of the issues they face and some resources available to help. Because when you leave military service, it's not as simple as changing your job. Almost every aspect of your life will change, from what you wear to work to who you hang out with.
And for many veterans, they want to spend time with people who understand where they have been.
For many veterans like Frankie Navarro, transitioning out of the military was not just about changing jobs. It's a different world.
In my transition, it was very present. It was something that that actually affected my personal life, my marriage, which that's different story. But everything in my life was very much affected by losing all that team and that camaraderie that we encounter, that we live in the Army.
If you ask 90% of veterans, you ask what's the one thing they miss the most about their time in service, it's going to be camaraderie. It's going to be that brother and sister to your left and right. You don't get that in the civilian world.
Organizations like Alaska's Healing Hearts find ways to put veterans together with activities that can help them reconnect with other veterans, their families, and their lives.
I think our watchword, as we say, is serving the battle wounded and battle weary, and that's that total warrior concept. You know, the warrior and their influencer, their family or their significant other, their friend, that best helps them heal as we try to put them together.
James Hastings with Alaska's Healing Heart says they don't focus on one activity, but try to match the person with whatever they want to do, whether it's hunting, fishing, or kayaking.
We just want people to feel like they're not alone. There's somebody out there that's worse off than I am, maybe I can help them, or there's someone who's got the same issues. Man, I wonder how they're doing because they seem to be doing great. They went through the same things when they're doing great. I wonder what they did. So if we can put those folks together, they share the tips, trades, and the tips and the skills of just survival.
A fall retreat allowed families to get together.
With this particular weekend, we've got bounce houses for the kids, we've got boats for the kids, we've got trail rides. Most everything's focused on the kids because this is mostly families signed up here. We want them to feel that family level of enjoyment because that opens up lines of communication.
20 years ago, while I was homeless on the street.
This is Devin Stewart's third retreat with the group, and he says a lot has changed personally since that first time.
The first year I came in, I weighed 105 pounds more than I weigh right now. I couldn't walk from my cabin down over there to the bonfire. I couldn't, without just being exhausted and feeling horrible. Getting out of the house, that was my first time really getting out of the house and going and doing anything.
Trying not to cry cause another brother died.
You could swap war stories out here if you wanted. You talk about fight and stuff. You could talk about nothing at all and sit and enjoy your beer or your soda pop.
One day you're putting up pictures of your kids.
But there's people here that have ears and they're willing to listen. They're happy to hear. We're among our people out here, if that makes sense.
Many who have found help through Alaska's Healing Hearts return and continue to serve.
But I do volunteer with these guys quite a bit. So I'm here to enjoy the the time, but I also bring my guitar in case anybody wants to like jam out.
The organization like this helped me get out of my funk, out of my cloud. Even when I might not be the best person in the world, the best man, or probably the best friend, service and serving others makes me learn how good can you be to other people.
Hastings says they focus on comfort first and foremost, and then get in the outdoors for a bit of adventure.
Fun causes smiles, causes laughter. You can't laugh without breathing. So we get them breathing, get them excited, get them going, and then we go from there.
And joining us now is Jesse Laken with the Alaska Warrior Partnership. Jesse, you're a combat veteran, of course, and we're going to hear about your story a little bit later on in this program. But we just heard a piece before where you said the thing you hear most from veterans is they miss the camaraderie. When you got out of the service, was that your experience?
Yeah, most definitely. I got out in 2010 and, immediately jumped into a job and couldn't, find what I was missing. I didn't really know that's what I was missing for years until I actually went to that same camp 10 years ago. James and his crew invited me out and introduced me to what serving veterans is. At the time, I just was lost walking through the civilian world and went to that camp. And I'm here now running a large organization across the state that covers almost every veteran that we have in our state.
And was there a moment when you said, okay, wow, the civilian world is really different after spending your time in the military?
Yeah, I got out, I started a job in sales, and then I started teaching and giving back, and then I opened up my own business, and so I was just kind of stumbling my way through life, not really understanding how much difference it was, right? I didn't have a purpose, I just was kind of stumbling my way. And after that camp, I saw that, hey, my story could help other veterans, became my purpose. So,
if you could go back and give yourself advice, what would it have been after all the experiences that you have had?
The advice I would give myself after that camp would be to look to my left and right and find the brothers and sisters out there struggling and continue to help them. A lot of times, us as veterans, we don't really understand we're struggling, right? We just kind of waiting for somebody to tell us what to do because that's what we knew in the military. And when you're just trying to make ends meet, you're just trying to get through the day, you're struggling, right? You shouldn't be trying to get through the day. You should be thriving. By the end of the day, you should be exhausted because you had a great day, right? But most veterans that are struggling, they're just trying to get to the end of the day. And we don't know that we're struggling. So I think veterans that have gone through that, or gone down that dark alley, or gone through that path, and made it through the other side and seen the tunnel, the light at the end of the tunnel, I think they could just reach out to left and right and really help other veterans understand that there is, light at the end of the tunnel.
And you talked about the organization that you run called Alaska Warrior Partnership. What does that do? How does that help veterans here in Alaska?
So Alaska Warrior Partnership, we do 4 things. We connect, educate, advocate, and collaborate. And so we connect with other organizations like Healing Hearts and Battle Dogs and Connect Vets and the Fallen Outdoors and the SSVF programs across the state. And we service veterans, find their needs, and educate them on their benefits. We help them, we guide them, we connect them, we get them the results that they need.
Well, Jesse, thank you so much for joining us here, and we will hear more about Jesse's story later on in the program. His organization, Alaska Warrior Partnership. If you would like more information, you can find more information at their website below. Jesse is the guy to find with all the answers.
And when we come back, it's the most common disability that's related to military service.
Gunshots, cannons, 20 years of being a Marine, you see and you hear too much.
From cannons to engines and gunfire, there are many reasons people in the military have hearing loss. And according to the VA, 37.5 million Americans have lost some of their hearing. and that is by far the most prevalent service-connected disability.
And as of 2020, more than 1.3 million veterans are receiving disability compensation for hearing loss, and more than 2.3 million received compensation for tinnitus. That's according to the Veterans Benefits Administration compensation report.
And we recently met with an audiologist who walked us through the hearing test so that we can see how quickly hearing can be lost.
Okay, so what I'm going to ask you to do is raise your hand when you hear the beep. Some beeps will be softer than others.
Listen carefully. Lean in.
I'm trying to find out the softest sounds that he hears.
Did you hear that?
He's doing very well.
Was it in the right or left ear?
And I like to switch ears to keep the patient on their toes.
This is a hearing test.
So you'll notice I start at 0.
The VA is the largest employer of audiologists in the United States.
Make sure that they identify the beep at least twice at the same level.
According to the VA, 1.3 million veterans received disability compensation for hearing loss in 2020.
Hearing loss is very prevalent because of the noise exposure that our veterans and military people are exposed to.
Those loud sounds impact all veterans. And we think that was from this being in the service?
Ma'am?
You think that was from being in the service?
Yes, ma'am.
No matter their age or service.
Gunshots, cannons, 20 years of being a Marine, you see and you hear too much.
Veteran Harrison?
Yes, ma'am.
Jerry Harrison flew in from Fairbanks to check his hearing aids.
Couldn't hear nothing. People are looking at you, they're talking, and you're getting closer and closer. And, you know, my wife gets on me all the time. I got the TV set on 90, you know, and she's like, please turn it down to like 20.
Hearing aids can help, but it does not restore the loss.
Noise will come into the ear canal and it will vibrate the structures, the eardrum, the middle ear bones, and it gets into the nerve, and that's how the signal goes up to the brain. So normal sound vibrates these structures gently and in a normal manner. Loud explosive sounds or repeated loud sounds will overdrive that system, and it will cause damage over time.
Because hearing damage is the most common service-connected disability, the VA and clinicians create personalized plans to manage the impacts. Being exposed to blasts increase the likelihood of decreased sound tolerance in veterans and service members. A study by the VA shows that people with decreased sound tolerance have negative reactions to everyday sounds, such as being overwhelmed by background noise in a public place.
They cannot hear well in noise. They feel that people are mumbling instead of speaking clearly. And that's a clear ear canal, very good. And we can help maybe make it less noticeable, but we can't fix it.
It can't be fixed, but it can be managed. According to a recent study from Johns Hopkins, mild hearing loss doubled the risk of dementia, and moderate hearing loss tripled the risk, saying brain scans showed hearing loss could contribute to a faster rate of atrophy in the brain.
They also said hearing loss contributes to social isolation and causing people not to engage in conversation, and that can also affect the risk of dementia. Hearing loss has also been linked to increased feelings of depression and a loss of balance.
When we come back, though they have served, many don't consider themselves veterans. There are almost 10,000 veterans who are women in Alaska, but fewer than 1/3 are signed up for VA health services. That's according to a group that advocates for women veterans in the state. The question, of course, is why? Why don't women raise their hands to claim their place?
Here it is. 2nd Platoon. This was in 1990. This is when the Gulf War was kicking off. They were right here in this big sea of green.
There she is.
This is black and white, but yeah, right there. This is my annual from airborne school. So jump school, where you jump out of airplanes.
Visual proof, representation.
I was a military police officer on active duty.
Vanessa Mead was in the Army.
But I think with women veterans in particular, when you don't see yourself, you don't really, there's like this stereotype of what veterans are. And I think it's shifting.
Yeah, so it's my story on my hands for everyone to see.
Flossie Davenport's military story began when she was 18 and joined the Navy.
You know, and you should be proud of what you've done. For the
are more than 1.7 million women who are veterans in the United States.
So we have over 10,000 women veterans in Alaska, and women veteran population is actually the fastest growing population of veterans in the whole country, and in Alaska in particular. And Alaska has, I think we're in the top 2 as far as per capita, the number of women vets and veterans just generally, but women vets too.
But many women don't know they qualify for veteran services. So Meade created Operation Mary Louise, which connects women veterans to the VA and each other.
Incoming!
She says 1/3 of veterans in Alaska use VA healthcare.
Weapons. Place system on weapons hold.
In a 2016 study from Services Women's Action Network, 74% of the respondents said their services aren't recognized by the public.
And a lot of times women feel really invisible as veterans.
A lot of what I do is for my daughters. Well, I have 4 kids, and 1 son, but 3 girls. I don't want them to be afraid, and I want them to be proud of themselves and look at me and say, you know what, my mom was strong. My mom did things.
She represented women, their services, and encouraged a future generation. Davenport's daughter signed up to serve.
She is actually in the Alaska Military Youth Academy right now. She is halfway done. She's made tremendous leaps and bounds, and I can hear it in her voice and see it in her letters, and I'm so proud of her. And she knows she wants to join the military after, and so she'll be the 3rd female veteran or service member and 5th in my family.
When we come back, we tackle the tough conversation about veteran suicide.
All I had was doubt, and I looked over and had an easy access, easy way out.
I was so miserable living that way. I didn't know that there were resources out there, so I chose suicide.
One of the most devastating losses among veterans is death by suicide. We're going to spend a little time talking about the issue, but before we do, we want to say if you are having suicidal thoughts, please contact the crisis line, and you can do that by dialing 988 and press 1 for veterans.
We also want to mention another resource. Under the Compact Act, eligible veterans in suicidal crisis can go to any community health care facility for free emergency mental health care. You can find more information about that at va.gov.
And according to the VA, in 2020, there were 6,146 veteran suicides. This is an average of 16.8 per day. There are 343 fewer veteran suicides in 2020 than in 2019.
But when you account for differences in population age and sex, the suicide rate for veterans was 57.3% greater than non-veteran adults in 2020. And that's for the nation. The VA says the veteran suicide rate in Alaska is significantly higher than the national veteran suicide rate.
Tonight we share the stories of 2 men. Both stories are difficult to hear, but it's important to listen to people in their own words.
This next story talks about suicide and attempted suicide. We understand this is a difficult subject for some viewers to watch.
Jackie, how long were you in the service?
So I was in for 10 years. For me, it was awesome. I was very unhappy that my knees went, and they gave me a medical discharge. So I had a great time the whole time I was there.
You know, I'm a combat veteran, a couple deployments to Iraq, had some traumas happen, some incidences. I got out of service within 60 days of getting back from combat, and 30 days was transitioning into the civilian world. I didn't have a preparation to get out and to cope with anything, to deal with anything.
I didn't know what to do. I just know I needed to make a major change in my life. I was drinking every day.
And then I went through more troubles with a divorce that was stemmed from PTSD and a TBI that I suffered. And so those traumas were part of the divorce, and the demons started coming about. And so I knew I needed to seek help.
So my darkest day was probably about 4 years and 3 months ago. I had been unemployed for quite a while. After giving up my job, I had developed a substance use habit. I was so miserable living that way that I didn't know that there were resources out there. So I chose suicide. That was my only option to not live this way.
I'm in that process, I'm applying, and I'm not getting the help that I needed, going through a divorce, all I'm thinking about is the bad. All I could think about was the worst case scenarios. The system was failing me. All I had was doubt, and I looked over and had an easy access, easy way out, and I grabbed the gun, I stuck it in my mouth, and I pulled the trigger. And the gun didn't go off.
So the only option I had was suicide. So that was a pretty bleak day. As I was attempting to complete the action, my doorbell rang, scared the living daylights out of me. And I had a friend that showed up that I hadn't seen in a couple months, and he just took one look at me and said, "You look like crap. I need your guns, and do you need me to take you somewhere?"
While I'm looking at the gun, I'm looking past it, and I see a picture of one of the founders of an organization that I helped start, and I started thinking about, what would he think of me? What would my brothers and sisters think of me doing this? Why am I failing them? Why am I failing everything that I put forward and tried to work? And I started thinking of how I could fix that, how I could help other people, how I could drive to support others that are in these dark spots to fight their demons instead of giving up.
And that was when I finally went to the VA and said, "Hey, look, I don't know what to do. I'm an addict, and I don't know how to quit." And I was going to take my life the other night, but I figured that I'll give this a shot. The VA was, so non-judgmental, and they recommended that I go to the domiciliary, which I didn't even know that we had here in Anchorage. It's a 50-bed inpatient facility for veterans. They have substance use problems or homeless problems.
And so my mindset shifted as soon as it was all positive after that. Prior to pulling the trigger, it was all negative. Afterwards, it was just think about the positive, how I could change so I could change others. And that started my determination.
I felt that I was helped by so many veterans that were staffed there. I couldn't believe it, how freely they gave of themselves. That really inspired me to want to go back and work for the VA and help other veterans. And that's important to me. So I feel a great sense of accomplishment every day when I go home.
At the time, this was within the last 8 years, I was homeless, my support system was taken away, I was broke, my bank accounts were cleaned out, and I was only thinking about the negative of life. And then since then, I've been able to build that back up and get myself founded and stable enough to support others. I own my own home now. I have an amazing career helping veterans, built a massive partnership of organizations that all care about veterans, and they all come together to take care of the needs and the wants and to support these guys. It's definitely life-changing.
I thought it was the best experience ever. I'm very open and transparent about my story. I think that there's still stigma attached to it. There's still stigma attached to mental health issues, to alcoholism, to addictions. Reach out, call the 988 number, come into the VA. There are providers there that want to help.
Joining us now is Rebecca Pillai. She's the Community Engagement and Partnership Coordinator with the Alaska VA Healthcare System. You heard their stories. What are your thoughts?
Powerful. I love hearing about veterans who recognize what's going on, reaching out, and especially like these two, Jesse and Jackie, going ahead and giving back, helping other veterans.
When you heard their stories, is there kind of a common thread with them and what you see in other veterans when they get out and they're dealing with those mental health issues and troubles?
Yes, in the transitioning period, getting out of service, you have this connection with your brothers and sisters. And then when you get out, it's kind of like learning to go ahead and live in the civilian life. And you don't have as many connection pieces, and things happen. Finding a job, relationships and things like that. It's not like how it used to be when you were in the military.
We've heard from Jesse that camaraderie is the thing that he hears most veterans are missing.
Yes, yes, the connection piece. Definitely, it's one of those risk factors, warning signs. If you're seeing somebody who is isolating from family and friends, not connecting like they used to, not answering their calls, texts, the social media messenger, things like that. Because there's a difference between solitude and isolation.
If you could go back in time and talk to people before they get out of service, what advice would you give them to transition easier?
Get connected with like our military to VA department, get connected with other veteran service organizations. That way you have those people there for support to find out those resources you might be needing, the vocational trainings, things like that. Because a lot of military, when you're in the military, I'm going to switch off, but when you're in, you're doing these jobs and then you get out and you realize, I don't have a certain certification. I don't have these things. And then you don't have income. And then there's financial, relationship, and it starts spiraling from there. So connecting before getting out so that you have these things in place.
One of the things that I was reading about the VA, we had mentioned that some of the numbers are starting to improve a little bit with the rates of veteran suicide. What is the VA specifically doing to address this issue?
There has been two huge initiatives. One is the Suicide Prevention 2.0, and that is one, there are clinical resource hubs that is specific evidence-based practices for suicide. All of it is virtual so that it could assist the smaller VAs and also the larger ones that have a whole bunch of veterans coming to them so that they can be able to provide those clinical care. The second is my position, the Community Engagement and Partnership Coordinator, for me to be working with our community partners, because there's not going to be one federal or state agency that's going to solve the suicide crisis. We need to go ahead and kind of work with our community partners. There's a lot of resources out there.
How would you work with families? What do you recommend for them, the families and the friends of service members who are getting out who maybe aren't sure of the next steps?
So you can go ahead and call if you're seeing any of the warning signs out there. Mention the isolating, but mood swings, crying, and then getting angry, not getting out of bed, not taking care of themselves, taking care of chores, any of like the risk factors, life stressors out there, good and bad, because I mean, kids graduating, going to college, that's a stressor. That's another transitioning period. But for them, they can go ahead and either call Coaching into Care to get some information on how to help their veterans, or the Veterans Crisis Line 988, press 1 for veterans.
And so you're saying Coaching into Care, because one of the things that we've talked about as we're going through this is it's tough sometimes for veterans to say, I need help.
Yes.
So if you're a family member that sees somebody in your family, this program helps you learn how to talk to them?
Yeah, it's exactly what this sounds like. It helps kind of coach that veteran into care. So they're providing information to the family and friends and assisting them and giving them the different resources out there also.
Do you find there's still a stigma attached to talking about suicide?
Yes, there's a lot of, not just suicide, mental health. Trying to go ahead and decrease that stigma is very important, and letting people know it's okay. We have Buddy Week, we have things like that to make sure.
And thank you so much for your time today. And of course, we want to remind everyone that the crisis line is available 24/7. Just call 988 if you need someone to talk with.
And when we come back, we're going to be looking at some ways that veterans are coping and healing in less traditional ways.
Thoughts that I've tried to hide, I'm so self-convinced, but I've just lied. So scared of the memory of a man I used to be.
Most of the veterans we have talked to have found a way, or they're finding a way forward, adapting to civilian life. For some, it's counseling and medication. Others find that help by including less traditional forms of healing.
Earlier, we introduced you to Devin Stewart. Like many combat veterans, Devin had a difficult time adjusting to life after service. But leaning into a new hobby, he found music helps him cope with tough memories. He now shares his story and talent with other veterans in search of healing.
Walking in the city, I had all my brothers with me, going house to house before the dawn. machine gun, I'm kicking doors down like I'm told to. Iraq when I was 21.
I was medically discharged from the Army in 2015. On my 4th deployment, I was injured in Afghanistan and ended up at Walter Reed Hospital for a little bit. And then when I got out of Walter Reed, went back to my home base and then started the transition part out of the military.
Got friends that ain't gonna make it.
So I went from being a staff sergeant, I was in charge of people, I was talking around people all the time. I moved out to Houston, Alaska, and I lived in a cabin with my wife and my daughter and her mom, and I didn't do anything. I started drinking booze and smoking pot and not doing anything. I became very comfortable with the couch. I think I was mad because I lost my career.
Hearing someone say that he's not ready, it's not his time to go. Tying on a tourniquet while he's bleeding out and breathing slow.
Some people aren't around to make a unit anymore, but it's a lot better than trying to do it on my own. Like, for sure, just having, I don't want to talk about my feelings to every single person. I write, and I do my little song stuff, and through that I've connected with even more veterans. I do go to counseling, I see a therapist, I take antidepressant medication in the morning. It's okay, it helps me do what I gotta do, but something was missing. Still, there was something missing. And I found that I can write and I can actually let things go.
It had been a decade and a couple wars, 1,000 miles. I found myself in charge, many men.
Like, once it's on paper, once I've put it to a song, I have to live through it to get to that point, and sometimes it's a lot of tears and it's hard, but once it's done, especially if it's something that somebody else can get something from, like, I write songs because it helps me. It's my stories or stories of friends close to me, but then sometimes when I play, other people seem to get something out of it. That's what I want.
Everywhere you stepped, you knew that the ground beneath your feet could disappear. You'd be dead. Tried to keep my head down, but I said I'd bring my boys home and ended up at Walter Reed instead.
I know that I struggled and spun in circles for years not knowing what to do, and I wasn't looking and I didn't have anybody to point me in the right direction or to give me comfort or say, hey man, you're all right. Well, sometimes it seems like you pull out a guitar, everybody's hanging out, people open up a little bit. And then even better, sometimes other guys will be like, hey, can you teach me how to play guitar? Or, hey, would you want to help me write a song? Yes, I love that. I would much rather everybody learn to write and play.
I just did my job, I'm not a hero. I've known a couple and I miss those guys, but I carry on.
We're going to hear another of Devin's songs in just a few minutes.
But first, we want to show you some of the new ways veterans are finding connections and ways to talk about their experiences. It's called the Anchorage Vet Center. It specializes in counseling and finding ways to forgive and heal.
All right, so let's bring our feet hip distance apart, rock back and forth between your toes and your heels, and then find a spot that feels really good to you.
Be in this moment.
We're just going to, every breath, inhaling.
Don't think about yesterday or tomorrow.
And then we're going to roll our shoulders up and back and down. Our palms face forward. And then walk your feet forward towards your hands. Oh.
Only think about now.
It feels so good. It's all about breathing into your body and that union of mind, body, spirit, and being right here in this moment.
This moment of peace is one the Vet Center in Anchorage wants all veterans to feel.
Connect it.
They offer support for people who have depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, as well as the psychological impacts of military sexual trauma.
Into downward dog.
There are group sessions, family counseling, even something as small as a free lunch.
Exhaling, bend at the knee.
Life in the service can be so different than life outside.
Isolated and alone, you get out and you go from a world of support when you're in the military to all of a sudden navigating a huge system in a huge world.
Officials say people here are often working in what is called moral injury.
We bring moral injury with us, and moral injury is where we break trust within ourselves, or a system breaks trust, or we had to do something against our values in a crisis situation that causes a trauma response.
That trauma response can create disorder in a veteran's life or family.
Of being present and accepting who they are now, not what they did, what happened, letting go of some guilt, letting go of some survivor's guilt in a lot of cases. Why did I make it and my brother or sister did not? And being present and living not just for self, but for the community.
Slowly, slowly, slowly.
Vet centers like this one are smaller and staffed with counselors.
The Vet Center is the perfect example of what community is. It reflects Alaska. We have our own culture, our own way of talking, and the best way to actually get back in and help is to be from that culture, speak the language.
Slowly, 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 we're uniting mind, body, spirit. Watch our palms come together and then bring our hands to Anjali Mudra.
Uniting the three and shaping a new, healthier life.
When we come back, a veteran's experience can vary widely depending on when they came home and how they were welcomed back.
And after our tours were over, what they would do is that they take you out of combat about 3 days prior to you going back home. They brought us back to base camps.
There are nearly 5,000 Alaska Native veterans in the state. For Benno Cleveland and Eben Walker, after their time in combat, there was no welcome home.
And there were very few services for them in Alaska. But over the years, they feel like they have been able to change that.
At the 2023 Alaska Federation of Natives Convention, a prominent display of photos and stories.
Well, my name is Benno Harry Saplonik Cleveland. I'm a combat veteran from Vietnam. I wear many hats. But I'm president of the Alaska Native Veterans Association, president of the Alaska Native Veterans Council, and I'm also currently chair for the Veterans Advisory Committee for AFN.
My name is Devin Walker Olren, and I'm the treasurer for the Alaska Native Veterans Council. And also I'm with the Alaska Native Association out of Fairbanks. Also a Vietnam combat veteran with the United States Marine Corps.
As veterans of the Vietnam War, both Benno and Eben say they returned from combat to an unwelcoming environment.
I think a lot of Vietnam veterans, when we got back, we threw our uniforms away, we let our hair grow out. A lot of guys had big beard, and a lot of them went out into the woods or into society, not wanting to talk about being combat veterans from Vietnam, the way our society treated us when we came back. It was really nasty treatment.
Yeah.
And it was not just how society treated them.
And then we were all by ourselves.
They were given no time to adjust to leaving combat.
3 days prior to getting home, we were still in combat. Still that combat mentality. You were fighting for your life, and you had to either kill or get killed. So, you know, we had no debriefing when we got back stateside, back home.
And when they got to Alaska, there were few services to help.
You know, when we first got back from Vietnam, there was none of that stuff here in Alaska. And if there was, it was very little.
But Benno feels they helped change that.
Because of the changes we made, there's so many clinics now. There's veteran centers, and there's VA offices. The other thing that is changed is now in a lot of the hub areas, Anchorage, Fairbanks, Palmer, Wasilla, Kenai, they have veteran centers, and they have groups like VFW, American Legion, and all the others. They have what they call NSOs, National Service Officers, that help the veterans fill out the paperwork and help them apply and get their benefits. That's how we can help.
And while their welcome home from the war wasn't much of a welcome, they are proud of their service and the service of others with them.
Each and every one of you, they've sacrificed for you. Some of them carry physical wounds, some of them carry emotional and mental wounds, but they served to protect you and our land. We're a nation of many, but we're also united as a nation of one, where we can celebrate our differences, our cultural ways, our language, our spiritual ways, because of that veteran, because of them soldiers that are serving today. And that's why we fight for them.
VA services are still limited in many parts of rural Alaska. When we come back, we sit down with the Director of Veterans Affairs for the state of Alaska. Welcome back. Joining us now is Verdi Bowen. He is the Director of Veterans Affairs with the state of Alaska. Verdi, thanks for spending a little bit of time with us. You are a veteran yourself, and you've been in the system and experienced for a number of years. What difference do you see from veterans that are getting out today to, say, 30, 40 years ago?
Oh, it's significant. 30, 40 years ago, we did not have the services in the state of Alaska to even provide a lot of the programs we have today for our veterans. And I believe that some of the veterans were told good luck when they tried to get some of their benefits 30, 40 years ago. And today we have a massive amount of benefits that we have across the state. For example, we have community-based outpatient clinics in 5 locations, 6 if you count Homer. And it's a lot bigger than it was. We also have sharing agreements with the Native healthcare system that allows veterans to get healthcare closer to home. And that wasn't here 30, 40 years ago.
What still needs to be here? What are we still lacking?
What we are still lacking most likely would be travel. Our veterans are eligible to travel if they have 30% or greater disability, or the disability that they have, say, at 0, they can travel for that item only. But if they have other items or other issues that they need, they have to pay for the travel themselves below 30%. Now, if you think about that in Alaska, Alaska's huge. And some of those costs would be horrendous for some, say, for example, someone in Mnemonic or Queethlik or something like that would have a difficult time getting into Anchorage.
As we have about estimated 70,000 veterans in the state of Alaska, how many are actually involved in the VA and getting services here?
Well, currently we have 37,000 people enrolled in the VA healthcare system. We have 22,000 people that are, they call them unique patients. They're actually receiving their care within the healthcare system, which is really good. A lot of veterans have their own healthcare system or their own safety net, if you will, either through their job or through retirements, and they choose not to use the VA system. But those that do receive a very comprehensive package of medical benefits.
Talk about why people wouldn't access the VA. Was it just not knowing better, not knowing where to start? What's the reasoning?
Well, some of the older veterans, they don't access the VA because they believe it's the same VA that they came home to, say, in the 70s or the 80s. And in reality, the VA that we have today is not the same at all. There has been so many laws passed that has helped us to generate it would be more friendly is the term that I'm using for. You know, most of the people that you see in the VA are veterans. And so we're blessed here in Alaska that the majority of the people that you see are veterans. And so they treat veterans just like they would want to be treated themselves. And so 40 years ago, it wasn't quite like that.
Yeah, I spoke with a number of Vietnam veterans who said that they did not feel welcomed home at all when they came home to Alaska. So good to see that we've made a lot of changes. One of the things we've talked about during the course of the show, mental health issues. How do you train a veteran who's been taught to make decisions and act on their own? How do you help them ask for help?
That is difficult. It really is, because you are trained to be a standalone individual in the military. You're supposed to, you just work irregardless of what you feel. You really train really hard. You work really hard, and then when it's time to receive assistance, it's a sign of weakness is the way some of us, and I'm just going to use me as an example as a veteran, we would look at it as a sign of weakness, so we don't ask for help. So the best thing that we do is we ask our people if they love their family members, please reach out for help. You know, if you really care for those around you, reach out for help, because you have to take it away from the person, the veteran, if you will, or the active duty military person. you're no longer thinking about yourself. You need to think about those people around you and get them to do it for them.
Yeah, we're all a part of this community. What can all of us do to be better?
Exactly, exactly. And I think that because we are part of the community, I think that it's not a sign of weakness to say, I can't do this. I mean, it's no different than taking your car to a mechanic. I'm not a mechanic on transmissions, and I'm definitely not going to open it up. And that's the way we should look at it in accord with our mental health issues, is that we should be able to open up and speak. And many times, I call it one and done. Sometimes our veterans will go in and see someone, and that's all they need. They'll get enough tools in their bag to be successful.
Looking at overall veterans here in Alaska, what would you like the community of Alaska to do better? How can Alaska help our veterans?
You know, the best thing you could do is ask them if they served. You know, a lot of times, a lot of our veterans don't tell anybody anything. They come home, they put on their civilian clothes, they go back into their house. If they don't put on a hat or wear something uniquely, you just don't know. You just don't know. In the military, we're all distinct. You wear a uniform, if you wear blues with your ribbons, you know where they've been, what they've done, and how well they did it. And if they're wearing their battle dress uniforms, you just have a name tag and the branch of the service, maybe some combat patches. But when you come home and you put on blue jeans and a t-shirt, you don't know. And so it's just important to just say, hey, did you serve in the military? And then the next thing is, especially for the state, have you attained all of your benefits that you were owed from your service? And that's the big thing, is to try and get all of the veterans we can within the VA system.
Thank you so much, Bertie.
Almost 70,000 veterans live in Alaska, but just a fraction are receiving the benefits they earned. The Alaska Warrior Partnership and the Alaska Office of Veterans Affairs have joined forces to locate veterans statewide. If you served, make yourself known at beknownak.com.
And to our veterans, thank you for your service and for speaking with us for this special. All of us, veterans included, are all ultimately linked together as Alaskans. We leave you with some final words from our veterans.
And now I guess I only know a couple chords on this guitar. Just a broken soldier telling stories about the life I've lived so far.
When I landed in Vietnam and I got back to my unit, I was back home. I was back with my family. So I don't know if you can make sense of that or not, but combat veterans will know exactly what I'm talking about.
Ask them how they're doing and be honest. You know, a lot of times we're really good at saying, how are you doing today? And they say, fine, and you go on. But when you look at them, you see that they look really stressed. You say, hey, I noticed that you're really stressed. It's okay to ask. It really is. It's okay to step closer and say, hey, what's really going on? Could I help you?
I felt that I was helped by so many veterans that were staffed there. I couldn't believe it, how freely they gave of themselves.
We've got water events, bouncy houses, cabins with heat. Yeah, there's worse places you could be on a Saturday afternoon than out here. And plus, yeah, my daughter thinks I'm awesome now. Daddy's got to talk to a camera. Oh, I'm getting eaten alive.
It's in our nature. We love to give back. We love to see somebody else, off the sweat on our back, thrive, right? We love seeing that.
Believe me, I'm all right.
It was great. I've made a lot of friends that became family. The camaraderie was strong, and I got to see the world. My first deployment, I was in Spain. I was stationed in Southern California.
Life is worth it. Seeing the light every day and waking up and taking a breath.
But if you make the world better and you help people smile and you help people have a better life, you're going to be stronger for that. You're going to heal from that.
Well, I'm just me, it's my fur coat.
Oh yeah.